7 is a letter about the Michigan schools and the asbestos class action lawsuits. And with that, I'll pass it over to Ms. Dye.
Is it up to me? I feel like I have to fess up now too about my shoes since I'm messing up these days. I hurt my ankle over the holidays during the move, and I have my athletic shoes on to go along with my suit.
I thought you were going to say you bought them at the conference.
No. No, you shot. That's what Drew and I were just laughing
Said
about.
athletic.
Well, it feels like a new year, and I want to give you an applause and welcome you to our board and just say I'm happy to be here. I have a lot of information. It's all informal. And compared to last year, it feels like I don't have that much to talk about, but I think we probably do. At the end of the year last year, we made some reductions in our special ed staffing because we had numbers and we had kind of a plan that we thought was going to work. And what happened at the beginning of the school year is that at Woodworth, we have had 6 resource students move in. At the middle school, we've had 15 resource students move in. 2 of those have resulted in alternate placements, which means that they were not going to be appropriately serviced within our school district, so it was necessary for me to look outside of our district to find an appropriate placement, resulting in 13 students left out of the 15 at the middle school and 6 at the high school. Now we have had a few drop as well, but when you look at who came in and who left, we have an additional 25 students in our district than we did at the beginning of the year. So we've had an additional 25 students in district. That does not count for the students that were placed in alternate settings. Current numbers at Woodworth, we have a resource room with Mrs. Perlberg, and she has 22 students on her caseload as of today. We did have 2 students move in just this last week, actually 3, 2 of which resulted or came to us with an IEP. Also at Woodworth, we have our ECSE program, and we currently have 8 students in that program. And that does also include a .5 paraprofessional that is mandated by the state of Michigan. We have to have so many adults per student in a ratio in that particular setting. At the middle school, do you have a question?
How many children did you say?
8 in the ECSE room.
And that's a half-day program.
That is a half-day program. It is 5 days a week, but a half-day program. We can go up to 14 in that room with 2 adults, and then once we hit 14, 15, and there's discretion in there. There is. I mean, it depends on the needs of the students and what they require as far as safety and just management. Sterility, nutrition, and those kinds of things. So we weigh that all out very heavily. We did hire a new ECSE teacher this year, and so right now, with that 8, a teacher and then our paraprofessional, it's a very nicely staffed room. It's becoming a real program. When you hire a new person who doesn't have the experience, it takes some time. So I'm happy to say that we are definitely moving. We've partnered with another district in the Ingham area to help us so that she has a model to build from. Since we're so small, we don't have a second one. So it's growing. Middle school, Mrs. Jansen has 22 students. Mrs. Bryan has 19, and Mrs. Hunt has 11, but she only spends part of her day at the middle school. What's new at the middle school is we're opening a more self-contained resource room. It's still resource. It is not a basic classroom, but it's going to function that way. And I will very happily entertain your questions when we get to the end of this. We made a decision about opening this based on numbers and based on student need, and based on our student population at Woodworth that will eventually transition to the middle school. And when I say basic resource room, it's a more self-contained area. Students spend a little bit more time in the special ed setting rather than the gen ed setting due to their need and their level or ability and what they can do and participate within curriculum itself. Okay, are there any questions about that at this time?
I'm a little confused because I thought all the move was to do more push-in, to push the children into the classroom and have less, more co-teaching, less resource.
Which is the pattern and where we're heading, and it's what the state tells us we have to do. However, also instruction takes place in the gen ed setting for most students. We also recognize that there is a population that is appropriate to have instruction take place in a very small alternate setting in a special ed room. The higher needs students, the students with perhaps less academic ability that need more support. We're by law required to provide for those students as well. We haven't had as much a need at the middle school. We do now with several of our movements, and we will have over the next couple of years.
So you're talking about, you're gonna start this class now.
It's here.
It's happening.
It's here. I've posted for the position.
I was gonna say,
posted
who's
prior to
teaching, and then
Christmas.
with everybody having 22 and 19 and.
We have a long-term sub,
Okay.
and I've posted, or we posted, prior to Christmas. That includes all of us, Carol, Loretta, Jeff. And we selected interview candidates, and I have 2 confirmed interview candidates right now. We selected 4, and had planned to interview on Thursday, but 2 of our candidates didn't respond, so we will return to the candidate pool and reselect and plan for next week. Okay?
Is that a parental choice to be there? I mean, could a parent say, no, I don't want my child there?
But we have to consider where the student's educationally based and where they're going to be most successful. So if we have a very high needs student that is not functional in a gen ed setting, we create a more appropriate setting by either opening a room or allowing that student to stay in the resource setting for more time. It's a careful balance, Erica. We can't, we're not ever gonna say we're gonna force a parent to comply with something. I have to follow the law. And it's my job as your director to make sure that the district is following what the legal ramifications of those environments are. So if a low needs student, let's say just somebody who's a little behind in reading that had previously been recognized as an LD student, what if that mom said, I want my kid in that? I would have to say, the law says I have to, according to LRE, least restrictive environment, service your child in the gen ed setting as much as possible with their same age general ed peers. That's what the law says. So if I have a student who's on caseload who ends up not being eligible anymore with our new SLD, specific learning disability guidelines, and I have to dismiss that student because that student no longer meets the criterion for eligibility, the parent can say, well, wait, I have to listen, but the law tells me what I have to do.
How many children do you have in this room now?
I can't answer that because I haven't reassigned the caseload because I don't have a teacher.
Okay.
So
I thought you said it was happening now.
It is happening now.
Oh, okay.
It is happening now, but it's a cross program.
Okay.
And this is why I don't have a diagram for you because it's very, very confusing.
I think she meant it's happening now as soon as she gets teaching.
Well, I do have a sub.
Oh, I thought she said she had a long-term sub.
I do have.
There are children in this
I
classroom.
have a long-term sub. I do have a long-term sub. Right now at the middle school, there are about 6 kids that it's appropriate for them to be in
That's
there
all I was
for
asking.
40 to 79% of their day. But that teacher also is involved with our interventions during prime time, and she also, when the students are in their social studies and science, she pushes back in, even though they're pretty high needs. It's the math and reading instruction where she's in the
That's
more
what she's doing
self-contained.
individually with them and the coaches.
And we have a variety of para support at the middle school right now. We have 2 as full-time as we get, which is 5 hours, 55 minutes. And then we have an additional person that's been supporting a fairly high needs student as we transition this child to the middle school from the group.
So there's kids from different age groups in this room?
Yes.
Mrs. Down, those 6 are included though in this 22, 19, and 11 figure.
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
that's all I wanted to make sure.
And it's still classified resource. It is not a cognitively impaired room, it's resource. And the reason that we have all resource rooms across our district now is it allows us to have greater numbers of students in there, and it also keeps us from having the kids in the classrooms too much of the time. So they're not going to be in the special ed setting more than 40% of their time, unless they're in an alternate setting.
What was the range that you gave before, the 40?
40 to 79%, and that's an indicator, Erica. That is something that the state is very clear about what we have to do. And I have our our data from last year. I have the data from the year before that tells us where we fall. That was our SBP 5 indicator that I had to do a correction for last year. The state says that the eventual goal is that they want 80% of all students, including special ed, to be in the gen ed setting, 80%
Right, that's what
or
confused me,
more.
I guess, because I remember that.
Yep. And I can tell you right now that we are at, I believe, 89% of our students.
So it's not just an individual student needs to spend 89% of their time, it's as a district, 89% of our special ed students
Yes,
need to be.
Yes. we're at approximately 88% of our special needs population being in the gen ed setting, 80% or more of the day. So we are well ahead of what the state says we have to be at right now. The good news is that our special ed students are successful, more successful than they've ever been. Okay, let me get back to my
Sorry.
high school. No, that's fine. Mrs. Hunt, who I said spent part of her day at the middle school and part of her day at the high school, has 4 high school students. But while she's at the high school, she's teaching 1 resource class and 1 basic English class. Mrs. DeSmith has 13 students on her caseload. She teaches a basic math class, 2 co-taught algebra classes, and 1 co-taught geometry class. This is just this track, by the way. Mr. DeSmith has 1 resource, 2 co-taught English 9Bs, 1 co-taught essentials for algebra. And Mr. Manson has 11, and with 2 co-taught government, 1 co-taught chemistry, and 1 basic government class.
Staff, I didn't hear
Mr.
Mr.
Ham, yeah.
Smith.
13,
13.
sorry, I
They
did
both
skip
have
it.
13?
Yes,
Who has 13?
both
Mr.
distance.
Mr. Ann.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mrs.
Mr.
Hunt has 4,
It's 4 and Ms. Nancy has
11.
And Mrs. Hunt has 4 because she's at the middle
She's in the
school.
middle
yeah.
school.
Right, and most of her students at the high school are 9th grade because she was our 8th grade teacher last year, and it made sense to me if she was gonna straddle the buildings and build a,
That she
help
has
us to build a
students she
program,
knew.
that she would help be our transitional person as she built those relationships. We have itinerant staff that includes ISD, but our district itinerant staff, we have our social worker who's .5. His name is Michael Zivzak. He is appointed to us through the ISD, so he's not really a district employee, but he services our district .5 of his time. He has 30 students. He has 10 at the high school, 17 at the middle school, and 3 at Woodward. Right now, in speech, Mrs. Oakley at Woodworth has 48 students, and Mrs. Bronner, who is 4th through 12th grade, has 52 students that she sees every week. And then our psychologist, Bethany Kasich, has 33 reevals or net reevals to do between now and the end of the year. And then beginning next school year, she has 56 on the docket as of right now, which is a huge, huge number. And our district annual calendar will come into play very, very heavily in planning to make sure that we are in compliance with all of those dates.
Did you make documents for us on this?
I did not, because this changes by the minute.
Staff, that means our population from a percentage-wise is growing as opposed to.
Our numbers, yes,
Yes,
have
that-
been.
Our special ed numbers have.
Yeah, because I think I remember when you came on board, I think we were at like 13% of our population got some sort of,
Service, yes.
Yeah. okay. And I think we totaled that, and don't hold me to this, but I'm gonna use total numbers, but I think it was like you were servicing like 184.
And we're at
students.
216 now,
Okay, that's
total.
what I wanted to know.
But that number also includes 19 students that we have placed at Hartwood. We
Okay.
have 1 who's in Okemos in a self-contained EI middle school program. And we have 3 at the Secondary Learning Center. Okay, and then we have 1 student at Michigan School for the Deaf.
But basically, we're just as needy now as we
Oh,
were.
yeah.
Okay.
New things that I want to review, opening the basic resource classroom at the middle school, which is resulting in our needing to hire another person there. At the high school, beginning this second trimester, we're doing something new. Jean Marie Hunt, who has been working with our intervention groups at the middle school, is now in our basic English class for our certificate kids. We'll be teaching direct instruction reading, which is not something that we've done in the past. We focus more on more of a traditional English type curriculum. But it made sense to think, well, these are the students who can't read. They have a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade reading level. Why aren't we teaching direct instruction reading at this level? So that's something that we're doing now through SRA, which is a program that we're also using as a freshman academic prep class. I don't want to steal any Andy's thunder, but that's something that we've brought to the high school. It's also something that we're continuing for middle school, so it's going to be a nice
That's the
cohesive
new class
program.
we're using for freshmen here, right?
Most of them are freshmen this year, but it's a program that's typically 3 years, so we would anticipate that those students would need continuing years of service to remediate as much as we can. Another thing that we're in discussion about at the high school is that we have resource classes, and resource doesn't have a traditional curriculum, and it's something that I think we need to look at, and while we recognize that students need support in their homework, I would like to suggest that we look at maybe splitting it up. Half of the time be working on homework, half of the time be working on skill remediation. And this is for our diploma track special needs kids. So that those students who we know are behind because they're identified as special needs would have the same opportunity to remediate as perhaps our basic kids. And they've kind of missed the boat on our interventions in middle school. So I'd like to move forward with that. It's just not something that's happening at this time. It's another change, and it's going to require some more purposeful planning and communication with parents, because there seems to be a misunderstanding or a misconception that our resource rooms are going away in our district, and that is certainly not the case. By law, we will always have to have them. We will have to service our students however they come is however we take them. We don't get to pick. It's my job to facilitate finding the best fit according to their eligibility, according to the documents, and according to what the need is. What is the need of that student? And then, from there we go. So for 216 of those kids, that's how I spend most of my time. So I guess I'm done. As far as Mary's question, I didn't create documents because when I start to look at this data, it gets a little confusing. I know what I'm looking at. I'll be happy to sit down with anyone, anytime that you would like. I will forward any documents to you that are, of course, going to be confidential or respecting our FERPA regulations. But if you have questions about anything, anytime, I'm ready to call me.
Can you tell us, like, at this point right now, what percentage of our students are special ed?
Yes. I can, but I have to look.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I'm expecting you to know right off the top of your head.
Just take the number of students and
16 divided by 5, 14.
12.84%, but this is last year's data.
Okay.
So
you've had an increase, I think.
according to December, we might be a
Yeah.
little closer to 13-14%.
I would be more interested in some more information regarding the resource room in the middle school.
When I have that info, I'll get it to you.
Okay.
I know what it's supposed to look like. It's going to be exactly what we need, and it's going to be flexible. It must be, because our student need is what tells us what we have to do.
That'll help us too, if parents come to us, we will have a better understanding of what you're trying to explain to them, and maybe we can also
It's different.
reiterate,
I appreciate your support, and I appreciate the questions because they're out there. We have to deal with them. Resource can't go away. It does look vastly different this year, even compared to last year.
I would just like to comment, and I just appreciate not only the breakdown you've given us, but I appreciate how hard you've worked for us in the time you've been with us.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Are there other questions?
The specific learning disability guideline, that's something new, did you
Was
say?
last year.
Last year? That's through the state or the federal government?
State and federal government.
And we were deficient in a lot of areas, right? I mean, as far as the
Well,
reporting.
not in regards to our SLD guidelines. They're posted on our website,
Okay,
and they were posted as of September 1st of last year.
okay, so that,
It's gonna change our eligibility, Mary, and when I say these 56 students that are slated for IEPs or for reevals next year, the criteria to be eligible is different now. What I can say about where we are as a district and a county in comparison to other districts is that we have an active intervention, response to intervention system, or you should be prepared that it's gonna be MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports, which is the new name. Because RTI is referred to in IDEIA. So therefore, it is looked at as a special ed intervention. Okay, so by renaming it, they're saying, okay, no, this goes back to the gen ed side. So in regards regards to that, we have data now for 2.5 years that tells us a pattern of how a student achieves according to the instruction that they receive. We have Ames, we have all of that data, we have active progress monitoring for those students that we are in question about. So when it comes to our district having the data that we need to meet those new SLD guidelines, we're eons ahead of most counties.
So what you're saying is what last year could have been considered special ed may not be considered
That's right.
special ed now.
That's right.
And now those students are being serviced through multi-tiered system of support.
You got it. And as we move forward,
We are so gonna get this, Carol.
I didn't think it was gonna take this long to talk about this, but I'm so glad you have these questions, because they're great.
So what, I mean, how, I guess, okay, so a student may have been eligible for special ed services, but now they're eligible under this, the new,
They have to be eligible under the new SLD guidelines.
okay. So that means that maybe some of the services that they were receiving previously, they may not
They
receive
may
anymore?
not get any of them.
They may not get anything.
No, but here's the good news. They're still gonna get their interventions during, let's say they're at the middle school. They'll still get their prime time. Those teachers that are special ed do not just work with special ed students when they're in the gen ed setting. They're still gonna have that support. Those paraprofessionals that are also assigned in there do the same thing. They go wherever there's a need. So those walls between that special ed and gen ed setting and that, that whole environment is so different now than it was before.
Dr. Howard, what are you saying to parents who say, my son had 4 interventions and now he has 1, if they don't buy into what you're just telling us? Who has the bottom line? I mean, are the parents just out there if they don't believe what it is you're telling them?
We have data.
Oh, I understand that, but not every parent's gonna understand. My question is, what do you, if a parent comes to you and says, my child still needs that
Right.
service, what do
What
you
do you
tell
say?
that parent?
It's gonna depend on the parent, it's gonna depend on the situation. Let's say, for example, I have a student that qualifies under otherwise health impaired through ADHD, okay? And that student might have a math goal, along with organizational goals, okay? There was at one point a math weakness, perhaps, but as we look at, how's the student doing right now? That would be the first question. What's happening? You know, so the student is doing fine, the math is fine, all of the grades are passing for this particular student. If it comes to IEP time and we're called in for a meeting, or the district initiates a meeting and we say, this resource service is no longer necessary, we'd like to move this student to a teacher consultant model where the teacher just kind of checks in. It's kind of a graduated step down from service so that we're not just tossing the kids out to the beach or the pool or whatever you want to say. It's a measured, intentional release, most appropriately, according to LRE guidelines. The law says they're supposed to go to a 504. I should be able to accommodate those students using accommodations and a checklist, and that should be enough. But I feel comfortable saying, let's graduate them down using a TC first and checking in to make sure that they have the support they need to continue that success.
I understand that.
So it's different every time. There is no straight answer.
Okay, because I'm not quizzing, I'm just curious. I mean,
I was trying to give you an example
Yeah.
because you're going to hear from these parents.
well, we do, but
Right.
my question is, are you telling us that because it's in that guideline, that the parent then has no final input if they totally disagree with everything you did? Well, what does Jeff tell them then? I mean, let's take it out of your step.
John,
Jeff. Okay.
What I'm going to say is, I hope to never be in that spot.
Yeah.
It's as much as I can do to stay away from that, but you're going to.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't do anything
Oh, I know
for
that.
building the relationship. So I'm not going to answer your question.
Well, no, and I guess, I don't think there really is an answer for it, but we can't leave a parent with no answer.
But if the student doesn't qualify, it's not going to be a surprise.
Well, okay. And again, I would defer to you, because I like what you're doing, but
All right.
I don't know.
I just have one more question along that line. You said passing, so is passing a D?
Yes, it is not
Passing a D.
maximum
So as
potential.
long as they're getting a D,
Yes.
we can move them down.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the rub would be with the parent. I think that's where the rub
It doesn't
is.
seem like having
You know what,
to.
no, no, we need to make sure to understand that special ed does not guarantee a student any particular grade. It guarantees that they have the same opportunity for success. It does not guarantee anyone anything over a B, ever, not ever.
I know that, it's a skill set that you're trying to prepare for,
Yes.
not a letter grade. I
Yes.
understand all that.
But there should never be an understanding that, you know, if they're not getting a B or an A, that, and some parents I've argued with in the past or discussed with in the past, if they weren't getting an A, they need special ed support. I didn't make the rules.
Legally, it's legally that
Yes.
if they're getting a
Don't we have
B,
kids
then-
on the honor roll there in special needs?
Yes, we have had.
My concern as a parent would be if my son is getting a D with the help, you're not giving him the help.
Yeah.
That would be
Then
my
what's gonna
concern.
happen?
But
Right.
as we've described, but over the last couple of years, our service and our look in instruction across the board with the interventions and the additional co-teaching support through special ed, all of those students are benefiting. The support isn't gonna look any different for the biggest majority of students. There's a small population that we know has to stay in place. We're not going anywhere. We set up shop.
And with the co-taught classes, with creative scheduling, we can guarantee that person's gonna get support in the co-taught classes.
Is that something you look to in the future to move to the middle school, is more co-taught down there as well, or
We're
we're
working
doing
on
this at the
that.
high school and we're gonna see how?
We have some classes that are truly co-taught, we have some that are, you know,
With support.
there are different kinds of co-teaching, and there are 6 different kinds of co-teaching.
Right.
And there's a comfort level, we really focused last year on high school and began to introduce it at the middle school.
Okay.
And yes, the
That
answer
is the goal, is to
yes.
continue to work on that.
And to build the partners.
Okay.
Sorry, you're not feeling good.
Huh? Oh, I'm fine.
Blow your nose or something. Anything else?
So how does this all fit in then with, how does RTI, mesh in with this as far as?
Beautifully.
Okay, because, I mean, the point of RTI is to get children in.
It's to help all students. RTI, or MTSS, is to make sure that any student who is behind gets the instruction and support that they need. We aren't waiting for the discrepancy of 2 to 3 years, which is what the old requirements for eligibility would be. They'd have to be this far behind to be looked at. Now, we look at every student across the board. And when those students, we're gonna see a big shift, but it's probably gonna take a few years. It's probably gonna be 3 to 5 years before we see the engine of our MTSS system coming through and having those students not be on caseload, but we're still supporting them down here. The ones that will be on caseload will be high needs kids.
Yeah.
Please don't feel like we grilled you.
No, but I am.
Well, one other question was,
I'll stay here all night.
you said in the Woodward Resource Room, we have 22 students,
Yes.
2 were added in the past week.
Yes.
So now my question is, how many of these children are school of choice?
Oh,
Is
Well-
that disproportionate to our regular population, or is it proportional to our regular
we
population?
can't by law, disallow a student, a school of choice
Of course
student.
not, but I'm just curious, related to our regular.
I have last year's data, I don't have this year's data, so to answer your question, I would have to, go back and research that and get with you.
I would like to know,
Okay.
compared our school of choice in both populations. I'm just wondering, because you said 2 were added last week.
Yes,
Were those school of choice,
no,
or in district?
they're in district.
both.
They
Okay.
just returned from, out of state
Okay, that's good.
after 16 years. So, the 23 is max in a caseload in resource.
Mhm.
So if you look at that number, please be aware of that.
Okay.
23, you said 23?
Yes. And that's with a waiver written by, typically it's 18 to 20. So we're over that.
When you were talking, one more question. When you were talking about the ECSE classroom, you said that has 8 students. Has that changed at all this year?
Yes, it's gone down because there were students that were not continuing to be appropriately placed in there. They were more appropriately placed in our either GSRP program or Head Start.
And you said, what's the max to that? Or you said that's where there's some flexibility?
14.
14.
Really 12 is what the guidelines say, but AM again has written a waiver to expand that to 14. But it would be really based on what the student need of that classroom is. If we had 11 with the kind of need that we have currently, I would be looking at needing to add another para for safety reasons.
Yeah, I hope, supervisor, when they
Yes.
took their pictures,
Yes.
it was hand in hand, or they
Yes.
were running.
It's a very, and that's what that classroom is intended for.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a language-rich environment, it's not there. It's in one of those other
So, and
alternatives.
we have one teacher, one aide, one parapro.
We have one teacher and one para. So there are 2 adults.
And there's, you said 8, but the population's gone down.
It has, it was at 11 at one point.
Okay,
and then
got it.
it's-
Okay.
We've transitioned a couple of
Okay.
students to other programs
Okay.
within our district.
All right.
Call me.
This presentation reminds me, Mary and I asked a question, and now the grades are out, and we still haven't heard back, is how the children that are taking both math programs that were deficient in one and moved on to the high
We're gonna
school,
bring that to you
when though? We asked that,
next week.
okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I knew this one would be long.
Enjoy the resort.
Get the shoes, yeah.
Moving on to the superintendent's report.